If that's what the jump from week 1 to week 2 looks like for Ohio State, pretty darn good. Welcome to Snap Judgments. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Buckeyes 2-0. They played better on offense. They posted a shutout on defense. I don't know, maybe the special teams weren't perfect. They committed a penalty and they didn't have a flawless kickoff return. But now we're already picking nits. Nitpicking.
I'm not nicking any pits. I'm picking the nits. I'm not.
None of that?
There's not, almost 700 yards of offense. You give up less than 100 on the other side of the ball. This was as thorough and complete an Ohio State win as I can remember in I don't know how long. It does feel like we saw a team elevate, and I think it's Western Michigan's fault because they played too well last week, and
They had Ohio State's attention.
Ryan Day said as much in the post game, and I believe that they, probably came into this thinking, oh, this team might be pretty good, and the Buckeyes came out and threw a couple haymakers early. Will Howard got going early. The defense, first drives are always the one where teams have scripts, they have things they do, and they missed the field goal, and at that point you're like, okay, no worries here. Yeah. Ohio State scored twice more in the first quarter. They just made it look very easy. A little slow down in the last half of the second quarter, and that was one thing I asked Ryan Day about in post game. It was 35-0. There's a minute to go. You force a punt. You have no timeouts. Ryan Day wanted his team to do that drive, right? Yeah. He was like, this is how we're going to need a win. We're going to need a drive like this to win a game some point down the road. And they went 4 and out, right? They had the first big play to Jeremiah Smith. My goodness. And then you go 3 and out after that. And Ryan Day was pissed off. Yeah. He was furious after that. And so I asked him, number one, I said, your voice sounds a lot worse after these games. And he said, yeah, I'm not calling plays, so I'm just yelling the whole time. And he said essentially that. He said, we get the first big play, we're moving, then there's 2 missed assignments on blocks, and the drive is over, and we're going to need a drive like that to win a game. So, to me, coaches who understand that it's 35-0, but you're still driving hard for your team to be perfect in that instance is awesome. And that's, to me, this evolution of Ryan Day as a head coach that we're getting to watch. And that was a prime example of that. But other than that, how do you complain about anything tonight?
Yeah, that's
not a complaint either way. I just want to be clear.
It's not. Ohio State wins 56-0 on Saturday night at the Horseshoe over Western Michigan. And I'm glad that we get to do it this way because it wasn't even really tongue-in-cheek. Like a week ago, first Snap Judgments of the year, you're like, well, maybe we can just pick something that's like, was this championship level or not?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything you can look at tonight and be like, that's a real thing to talk about moving forward. I get it that in the first half of the Akron game, Ohio State didn't block the way they wanted to. Even if you want to look at the one deep throw, everyone's wanted to know if Will Howard can stretch the field. He missed one to Jeremiah Smith, took immediate ownership of that, went to the bench. He was talking to the wide receivers, looked like he was apologizing for it, got it out there, corrected it, and threw a dime to Emeka Egbuka on the next drive, down the field, taking those shots. There are things in a game that were not 10 out of 10, 100%. That's going to happen. They're long games. The more plays that you get with the talent level that Ohio State has and the confidence that they're playing with, that's how you get results like 56-0 at the end of the day. Will Howard started 10 for 10 for 177 yards. He had his first rushing touchdown on top of that.
I was so worried about Bill Landis.
I told him, I said, well, after that, so the first one that was incomplete was a throw in the red zone down there to Jelani Thurman.
It was in Jelani's hands.
It was there. And I immediately texted Bill. I was like, Tate Martell just popped some champagne.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
The 10 for 10 in the game for Tate Martell remains the highest completion percentage in Ohio State history. So kudos to Tatum.
But you want to look at the one. I'm not saying anyone is doing this. If we wanted to say, is this championship level? There were enough other opportunities for Will Howard to throw the ball downfield to be like, nope, it's fine. They missed on one throw, and not everyone is going to be perfect. Ohio State played a phenomenal game in, I can't quite say all 3 phases. There are things that they could have done better on special teams. And so if that's where I'm going to nitpick,
yeah,
I don't want to, but that's where I will.
I'm just going to, Western Michigan deserves some credit. Their punter did a great job keeping the ball up in the air. Brandon Ennis did not even get to return a punt. So my bold prediction of a punt and a kick return in the same game fell flat. I did predict the score 56-0. So let's be clear about that.
Oh, well, that's well done.
Thank you very much. No, but there are little things, and ultimately in a game like this, you can say 1,000 things that went really, really well. But we're trying to see the little things, which is why, again, I'm noticing Ryan Day at the end of the first half. There was a moment in the second quarter when C.J. Hicks, who has now clearly been supplanted by Arvell Reese as the next man in at linebacker. These are the things that I think matter for the long-term growth of this team. He came in the game and he was taken aside by Lathan Ransom, who was basically saying, let's go. Like, you know that matters. And I'm not entirely sure how to quantify why it matters, but it was an intentional moment between Lathan Ransom and C.J. Hicks, who clearly is a player people want to see on the field, but hasn't been able to put it all together. And then you see that moment. And like, there's something special about this team. And 56-0 feels good all on its own, but like, there are the little things that really do stack up and add up. And that's what we're trying to parse through in a show like this.
But I think that it is acceptable, understandable. You're going to have mistakes over the course of a game. The way that what matters if this team is going to win in late November against Michigan, win the Big Ten championship, win however many times they need to in the college football playoff. What's going to determine that is the way they respond when they mess up. It's not going to do any benefit to Ohio State to just continually pick out 3 or 4 plays or 2 or 3 areas of the game where they could play better if they don't ever correct it. How did that happen? Will Howard put up his hand after the missed throw to Jeremiah Smith, came back, threw that ball to Emeka Ibuka. His decision making was vastly improved, not improved, just didn't have the one mistake.
Decision making was pretty perfect tonight by Will Howard. If we're talking,
So I shouldn't have even put it in those terms. But he didn't have any of the lapses that he had a week ago. That part was out of his game, and then he bounced back from one bad throw. You have Cody Simon coming back in the leadership part, communication. He immediately makes an impact for Ohio State, sets the tone with the sack, breaks up a pass on the second drive. He goes out there, and you can see the linebacking group felt like they were a lot more solid from week 1 to week 2. Having him out there is significant for that. We spoke all week long about the offensive line and ways that they can improve. The running game was dynamic in every single way that I think you could measure it.
Did they average? The Buckeyes were averaging almost 12 yards a play in the first half. I think there was 11 point something by the time halftime came around. And obviously you bring in the second team, third team stuff, that slows down. But one of the guys that I was talking about on Thinking Thursday or Three Thoughts Thursday, whatever, was about Quinshon Judkins. And question answered. I mean, I don't know if he was a little shell-shocked in week 1 against Akron just about being in a new environment, but he ran hard as hell tonight. And the way that buoys Travion Henderson and the Travion buoys Quinshon, it's special. There are no wasted carries by those dudes tonight. Every time they got the ball, it was 100 miles an hour. And then you see that then start to trickle down to James Peoples. Sam Williams-Dixon has a 30-yard run, with behind the twos on the offensive line. You're generating, and this is something you talked about pregame when we were talking about whether or not you should play Cody Simon and Donovan Jackson. But Austin Sareveld, now you have basically a guy that you feel probably confident enough that you can almost pencil him in as a 6th starter on the offensive line. Played really, really well. There are a lot of really positive things about tonight, and now Ohio State is looking at this as a way to say, we're taking the steps we need to take. And a lot of teams, I think, would just say, okay, well, let's take a deep breath now. We get this off week. And that is not what they're saying. They're calling this an improvement week, not an off week, not a bye week. They are going to practice as hard as they have, if not harder this week, because they get the extra time off. So, this team understands that they are nowhere near where they need to be. But if this is the starting point, game 1, you can look at it 1,000 different ways. I don't know that week 1 is ever the best representation of what a football team is going to be. But this was certainly what we expected from Ohio State. Dominant performance by the defensive line without any huge individual performances. And that, to me, is the most encouraging thing. It didn't matter which group was out there, if it was Caden Curry or Kenyatta Jackson or Mitchell Melton or Jack Sawyer or JT Tuimoloau or any of the defensive tackles, Tywan Malone making plays, Caden McDonald, like stout. Dude is really good. Like, they just, every guy they put in on defense did the job. And that's, if we could go back, it's been 5 years to the day since Ohio State's last shutout. If we look back over the last decade or so, how many times have we watched Ohio State be up 49-0 and the backups come in and give up a touchdown because they just can't get off the field? Like, to see these guys, and that's the value of getting them in the game early, right? And you are getting them in real moments. And so they're not quite as goofy when they go out there in trash time.
Well, just not prepared. I mean, I think the way Ohio State has managed these first 2 weeks in training camp as well has got a lot of people. Certainly Austin Cerevel, that's a unique situation, but the way Arvell Reese has come on, would it have transpired in that same way in previous years? I don't know if it would have, and whether that's a different approach from Jim Knowles, James Laurinaitis, or Ryan Day at the very top, maybe some combination of all of that. You called it at the start of Snap Judgments like the evolution of Ryan Day as a head coach. I almost feel like it's, I don't know, a return, a renaissance, like a revitalization, a rediscovery of what he did initially, because the stuff that he's like not calling plays, that is different. That is an evolution for him. But I think the level of aggression, the way that he is coaching the pregame activity, the mosh pit, in the huddle with the Buckeyes, like that's the stuff that like early Ryan Day did that endeared him to that team, and I think allowed them to buy in. Hey, this guy is not afraid on 4th and 2 to take a deep shot in a playoff game. He is fearless. And I'm not saying that going for 4th and 8 in the third quarter of a no-stakes situation against Western Michigan is the exact same thing as doing that against Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl. But if you don't do it and don't tell your team that you have their back in those situations so that they can get out of the game, it's good. I think it'd be harder mentally for everyone in the program, let alone Ryan Day, to be like, well, now I have the trust in that. So that's significant to me.
No, that matters a lot. That was 4.5 minutes to go in the third quarter, and Ohio State hadn't scored in the third quarter. There had been it had felt a little discombobulated when the Buckeyes opened up the half, and you started at the 6-yard line, and then you get a big pass play that gets called back, and then you're at the 2, and then it was just a very clunky start to the third after a clunky end to the first half. And so I think Ryan Day, like, that was a put your foot on the gas pedal, but not in order to run it over Western Michigan, but to make your team aware, like, there's no slowing this down. We're not going to stop. And that is really encouraging. There's so many good parts to this team, and every game is going to provide a little bit of a different insight into what's going to make them special. And when you look around college football and you see Alabama struggling in the fourth quarter with South Florida today. I don't know what the final score ended up being.
They wound up blowing them out late. I think it was like 40-something, 16.
So it was 17-16 at the end of they scored that many?
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Oregon, as we're recording this, is, I believe, still struggling with Boise State. Obviously, Michigan. We watched Notre Dame go out and lose to Northern Illinois. Like, you can lose these games. And Ohio State, I don't think ever gets enough credit for not losing these games. And it's not always pretty. It's, last week is not pretty. You win by 46 points. But, like, when you can just consistently do this, I think Ryan Day and the Ohio State program deserves a lot of credit for never seeming to have those stumbles.
Yeah, I think BTN showed a stat at one point. I was not watching the broadcast because I was in the press box, but I think, like, whatever it was, like group of 5 non-conference games, the only program since 2000 to not have lost one of those games is Ohio State. So we can say, well, the level of difficulty is going to go up and they're going to play better competition. Absolutely, that's true. They play in the Big Ten, and they're going to face a gauntlet down the road to try and get where they want to go in the college football playoff. I wouldn't pretend to stand here after game 2 and be like, well, they figured it out. After week 1, they started fast. Everything was where they wanted to go. It's got to be a mixture of these things. Week 1 was not as bad as it may have seemed. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion. I gave my justifications for that. If you disagree, I certainly understand. But I didn't make a hard and fast opinion about how good or not good that the Buckeyes could be week 1. And I think the same thing has to be true tonight. They made improvements across the board. just about every single way that you could. That doesn't mean that they're done. That is why they're already talking about week 3 in the soft date being an improvement week, because there are still things that this team, to be as special as they want, they must continually push themselves. I'm not saying that this level wasn't good enough to beat Michigan, Penn State, or Oregon, because I think the way that they were rolling and the way the running game was better, and Will Howard with the decision making, and the defense at this level, it's this is the best defense I think.
This is as complete a team as Ohio State's had in a long time.
But the point is, even as good as it looked, there's still a long way to go, just like there was after week 1. So the work is not done.
No, and the reality is, it's not about beating Western Michigan 56-0. It's Ohio State is competing against itself in these types of games. And so when you go out there, and I think that's probably why a week ago stuck in people's craw, because you go out there and you don't look to be the best version of yourself. And that maybe is unexpected or not a reasonable expectation for week 1. But this is what Ohio State's supposed to look like. And if this offense, which was just super fun to watch tonight, they were doing all kinds of things. Will Howard is so enjoyable to watch play because he just seems to always be in the right spot, always making the right decision with the football. There's a long way to go in this season, but this team has every tool to get there.
Yeah, I think none of them wanted to say last week, hey, this was our first time. This is the first game as a long layoff. But a week later, you heard Will Howard say it. You heard Quinshon Judkins say it. You heard Sonny Styles to some extent say it. He had the headset on for week 1 to week 2. It's like, we're comfortable now. There's a routine. The season is rolling, and you had tape that you could, not just that you got to watch of Western Michigan, but of themselves from what happened in Akron, and you find what worked, what didn't work. This team, it is, again, I keep saying it, they're not done. It is a work in progress, but you saw a glimpse, I think, against Western Michigan of how special it can be, regardless of the level of competition that they faced.
Yeah.
If you, to use your terminology there, if they're measuring it against themselves and they're trying to be the best version of Ohio State, they still didn't accomplish that. They won 56-0, and they will take that into this next week.
And this could have been 77-84 to 0. They could have named their score. They stopped doing some of the things in the first, middle part of the second quarter, and then obviously the first part of the third quarter. They could have. You could just throw it to Jeremiah Smith anytime you want.
Yeah.
And just throw it deep. And, 1 out of every 2 times, Will Howard's going to connect on that ball, and it's going to be a touchdown because he's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well,
this team's good. Bottom line, this team's good. Bottom line, this game means nothing except for it's a real big step.
Well, you mentioned it. Ask Notre Dame if these games mean nothing.
Yeah.
You still have to go out there and perform and deliver.
Well, it means nothing now that it's over.
The next 2 weeks, okay. The next 2 weeks would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
If it had, gone a different way. But it did not. Instead, it was 56-0. And somehow we still were picking a few nits.
I'm not nitpicking that.
No, I did.
This is as good as it gets.
I did it, not you.
Celebrate, folks.
I have to take ownership when I do something like that.
Enjoy the NFL on Sunday. Enjoy the notebook. It'll be online at 7 a.m. on Sunday. Bill will have some Sunday thoughts about the Ohio State Western Michigan game. It's great to be back. And it felt like Ohio State was back tonight.
Yeah, that was a fun one, fun to cover, fun to talk to the Buckeyes afterwards as well. So a lot of coverage of that coming on the notebook and everything else. Roosters, just a heads up, it will be on Tuesday again this week. I know I said Monday, but it'll be again Tuesday at at our new home on Henderson Road. So that stuff's going on. We're still going to have full coverage even throughout the off week, as we always do.
Improvement week.
Improvement week is underway. Improvement week number 1 of 2 for Ohio State this season is already here. I don't like it, but here we are. Ohio State is a winner, 56-0. Snap judgments are over. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.